Hello and welcome to a Friday edition of the Managing Madrid podcast. Very strange that we're recording the mailbag on Friday, but just logistical things. I was traveling, and by the time I got to Dallas, the time difference between here and Valencia was just too vast, too dramatic. And to be honest, I'm glad because I was just destroyed and I passed out basically like around 7 p.m. last night. So I'm glad we didn't record and we rescheduled to today. So a very rare Friday edition of the Managing Madrid podcast with myself, Kiyan Sobhani, and the great Lucas Navarrete. Lucas, how you doing?
Hey Kiyan, I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me as every week.
Is Valencia now in cool down mode? Are you guys now turning heaters on? How you doing over there?
No, it's pretty fine. We had a pretty rough week. I don't think it was last time we talked about the previous one when it was really cold, but now it's fine. I think it gets like around 11 or 12 during the night, and then during the rest of the day it reaches the high teens or even the low 20s. So we're fine right now.
Well, it's interesting to see like the different. It's always trippy for me as
Celsius, obviously, by the way.
Celsius, yeah. I mean, it's always trippy for me as an East Coast Canadian, or just Canadian in general. Like, it doesn't get warmer out west unless you go all the way to Vancouver or something. Just as a Canadian, to like hear people like talk about the weather. Like, for example, Matt told me, "Hey, when you come to Dallas, bring your cleats. I think we're gonna do a little kick around Saturday morning." I was like, in my head, I was like, kick around, okay. Indoor, I'm assuming. And he's like, no, it's like, and I checked the Dallas weather and it's like 26 degrees. Oh my God, 26 degrees. And even like
Celsius?
Yeah, Celsius. And in November and I mean, it's a little bit cooler in the mornings. Like this morning, I think it was like under 10, but it warms up to like 15 today. Tomorrow it's 23. It's just weird to think about that as a Canadian because we literally just had a historic game in Canada beating Mexico in the snow. I don't know if you saw that. Yeah, so it's just, our perspective is always quite different. By the way, before we get started, I sent you a clip, which I'm sure you had seen it way before I sent it to you. But the Jokic pass yesterday, was it Austin Rivers he passed it to?
Yeah.
I think we should put Austin Rivers in prison for not finishing that and not getting Jokic the assist. Just a criminal act.
Defender, I think the defender tried to steal the ball and knocked it out of his hand. So the layup, I mean, the layup effort was terrible, obviously, but I think that the defender kind of knocked the ball out of his hand. So
no excuse. We should be talking about that as one of the great assists. Like that should be on like what NBA does, greatest assists of all time package, and it's like a bunch of Magic Johnson and Jason Kidd passes, and then that also gets thrown into the mix. What a pass. Amazing.
I'm not surprised anymore anyway when I see Jokic. I mean, I've seen that pass like 4 or 5 times from him in his career already. Like I've watched pretty much every game he's played for the last 5 or 6 years, and he always delivers these kinds of passes. So this wasn't particularly surprising to me, even though it's obviously great.
I'm also a little bit annoyed because my first time ever in Dallas, possibly my only time ever in Dallas, the Mavericks are on a road trip and I don't even get to see them in person. So it was devastating when I saw the schedule. All right, we have some patron questions to go through, and just given the fact that we're already one day behind on the mailbag, let's get started. Our patron Frederick Rantakiro says, if you could have chosen the perfect third midfielder to complement peak Modric and Kroos, who would it have been?
Well, given the results Real Madrid have had with the trio I'm about to mention, I think Casemiro is a nice fit. I know we've all got frustrated about Casemiro's performances sometime in every season, especially when Real Madrid were taking on smaller opponents. Knowing that maybe the team didn't need such a defensive presence in the midfield at home against this smaller opposition. So I realized this, and I've been vocal about it, that maybe in these particular occasions it would have been fine to play with an Isco, for example, or with another central midfielder more creative than Casemiro. But at the same time, they dominated European football for so many years. So it's hard for me not to pick Casemiro. But for argument's sake, I think about a physical central midfielder which will allow to play will allow Kroos to play in a more Xabi Alonso role, if you will, like on a more Pirlo role, with whenever he had Marquisio and Pogba and Vidal playing in front, and allowing him to just distribute the ball from a more deep position, from a deeper position. So I think that Fede Valverde in his peak will be a very nice player to play alongside both Kroos and Modric. I realize that Fede is probably not that kind of player just yet, and timeline will never fit, because whenever he's actually a force to be reckoned with in European football, like 3 or 4 years from now, Modric will be in his decline. But a player of Valverde's style and you know, the way he understands and views football will be just fine with Kroos playing deeper, and then Modric bring in a more creative style of football up front.
Well, first of all, I agree with you, but I mean, I agree with a lot of the things you said in that statement. I don't know if there's anything I disagree with, but I'm in a similar situation as you, is that I've been very critical of Casemiro a lot over the years, but I've always been given credit to where it's due with all the awesome things he's done. And while I think there is a player I would craft specifically to pair with Kroos and Modric, which I'll talk about in a second, I think that that Casemiro almost has to be, out of respect and by default, the answer to this question, because the margin of error is so small that if you replace Casemiro with anyone during the three-peat, there's a good chance we don't do the three-peat.
Right.
Everything was a perfect chemistry and perfect concoction to make that team successful for 3 years in a row. Like, that's not luck. That's domination. I don't care how you spin it. 3 consecutive years, that's not luck. And Casemiro was a huge part of that. And I think, aside from his defensive contributions, which were incredibly important, he was the best ball winner in Europe for that entire stretch. But also, he scored an important goal against Napoli. He scored an important goal against Juventus in the final that year. So he's also contributed offensively. Now, having said that, if I'm starting from scratch, let's say it's like an all-time team, and I'm given peak Kroos and peak Modric in the midfield, who would I pair that with? I would love a peak Fernando Redondo just behind them as the anchor, because he complements them in terms of...
Yeah, that's unfair. Come on, that's...
What? The question was, who is the perfect third midfielder?
Right, okay.
I feel like that's a fair answer. Redondo has the defensive intelligence, organization, the IQ, the passing ability, the dribbling ability, the press resistance. I feel like if you put those 3 together, hey, maybe we win 6 Champions League titles in a row. I don't know. So that's my answer to this.
Yeah, a current player, given that I said Valverde in 4 or 5 years' time, a current player right now, I think an interesting asset would be Goretzka. He would allow also Kroos to play deeper and distribute the ball in a Pirlo or a Xabi Alonso-esque role, if you will. Like, Goretzka would bring this physicality up front and this ability to press up front alongside Modric, to make sure that in the end Real Madrid are not missing Casemiro defensively that much, at least against a smaller opposition. I think Goretzka, for example, will be a very interesting addition, which will allow to play Kroos a little bit deeper. And that's something, by the way, playing Kroos deeper, I think that this is something I would have liked to see more often in these last few years, especially again against the smaller opposition when I feel like Casemiro wasn't that needed.
I think Kroos in that role could work in a specific scheme. From current crop of players, also, I think maybe it goes without saying, but I think N'Golo Kante would work there.
Oh, sure.
I'm trying to think of. I think Verratti would suit this team. Would suit those 2 players nicely. Kimmich would, because they can be interchangeable
playing
too.
Deep, though.
Yeah, but you could be interchangeable. Like, look, it's not his ideal role, but I've even seen Modric play that role for Croatia, and he can do it. Like, I think you would have to play a specific type of football, and that is, you have to have quite a bit of the ball and ability to win the ball quickly, and not rely on Casemiro sprinting back trying to stop attacks. So it would have to be in a specific scheme. But I think Kimmich and Kante could play that role, and obviously I didn't mention him because I feel like Real Madrid fans would look at it as taboo and be annoyed. But I mean, Busquets fits the profile too. Not this version of Busquets maybe, but like peak Busquets for sure. Would really fit into any defensive midfield team, as a defensive midfielder for any team. Rovi Taghiev says, "Hey guys, and I hope all is well with both of you. Am I the only one who thinks Barcelona fans their hype about Xavi is way too exaggerated? They are celebrating as if they've already turned their season around and he's had success in Qatar, but is that really a big thing? Solskjaer had a success in Norway as well, and we know how that turned out to be at Manchester United."